Absolutely. Here's a 700-word expansion in Mathew Hussey's style and tone, flowing naturally and conversationally. You know, we often underestimate the power of a simple hug. It's funny how something that seems so small, so effortless, can carry more meaning than hours of talking ever could. When you wrap your arms around someone, you're sending a message that words can't quite reach. There's a kind of language in touch, a silent conversation that happens in that moment when two bodies meet. And for men, this is especially true. Society trains men to speak less about their feelings, to measure their worth in action, success, or strength. But when you hug them, even for a few seconds, you're bypassing all of that noise and connecting on a level that's immediate, visceral, and, if you pay attention, deeply impactful. A hug can tell a man so many things without him needing to say a single word. It can say, "I see you," without judgment. It can say, "You're safe to be yourself here," without forcing him to explain, and it can communicate care, appreciation, and emotional presence in a way that's simple yet profound. Men may not always articulate these feelings. Some may even pull back initially, feeling a little awkward or unaccustomed to that kind of vulnerability. But the truth is, internally, that hug resonates. It often reaches places that words can't touch. There's a relief in it, almost like a pressure being released, a sense of being acknowledged not just for what they do, but for who they are. It's fascinating because so much of male emotion is expressed in action rather than speech. They fix things, they plan, they provide, and in doing so, they hope they're communicating love, care, or protection. But sometimes, all that doing isn't enough to convey the emotional weight of what they feel. That's why a hug can be so powerful. It's a shortcut to connection. In that brief moment, he doesn't need to prove anything, justify anything, or explain himself. He can just exist, and someone else's embrace validates that existence. But here's the thing that's often overlooked. The quality of the hug matters more than the quantity. A rushed, distracted hug doesn't carry the same energy as one where you're truly present. When you hug someone and you really focus on the person you're embracing, the way your arms meet theirs, the softness in the moment, the stillness that allows both of you to feel, you're creating a space where emotions can be safely experienced. And for a man who isn't used to openly showing vulnerability, this is transformative. It can shift his sense of emotional security, make him feel more connected, more understood, and more willing to let down the walls he's spent so long building. You might also notice the subtle changes that happen when a hug lands the right way. He exhales in a way he hadn't before. He relaxes, his shoulders drop, his expression softens. It's almost as if his body is releasing tension he didn't even realize he was carrying. That's the hidden impact of touch, the way it allows someone to feel seen and accepted without the need for explanation. And while he may not immediately verbalize what that hug did for him, the effect lingers. It shapes how he experiences closeness, how he responds to care, and even how he navigates emotional intimacy moving forward. The beauty of this is that you don't need to overthink it. You don't need the perfect timing, the perfect words, or a grand gesture. You just need presence. You just need intention. You just need the willingness to be a bridge for someone else's emotion, even for a few seconds. And in doing that, you're teaching him that being vulnerable isn't something to fear, it's something to trust. In the end, what we sometimes forget is that hugs aren't just comfort, they're communication. They're the quiet language of empathy, of connection, of love. They remind us that human beings are wired to need touch, to need reassurance, to need moments where we can simply feel without performance or pretense. And for men, who are often told to be stoic, strong, and in control, that reminder can be revolutionary. A hug can speak volumes without a single syllable. It's one of the simplest yet most profound ways we can reach each other, break through walls, and share what's inside. Absolutely. Here's a 700-word expansion in Mathew Hussey's style on vulnerability vs. strength flowing naturally and conversationally. There's this misconception that showing vulnerability is somehow a weakness, especially for men. Society has spent decades teaching them that strength means keeping emotions tucked away, holding a stiff upper lip, and being untouchable. But here's the truth. True strength doesn't come from hiding what you feel. It comes from having the courage to be seen exactly as you are, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it might make you feel exposed. And when a man experiences a hug in that context, it's often a revelation. For the first time, maybe, he feels like it's okay to let someone in without losing himself, without risking judgment or ridicule. A hug, in this sense, is an invitation to trust. It's a reminder that you can be strong and still accept care, that you can be resilient and still let yourself soften. There's a paradox here that's beautiful. Vulnerability doesn't diminish power, it amplifies it. When someone allows themselves to be open, to lean into connection, they signal a kind of confidence that words rarely capture. And men feel this acutely. They feel it in their chest, in the way tension releases, in the subtle ease that comes when they realize that being seen doesn't threaten their identity, it enhances it. This is why many men resist vulnerability initially. Not because they don't want it, but because it's unfamiliar. They've been taught to measure value through control, through achievement, through performance. And when a hug lands in that space, it challenges all of that silently. It says, you don't need to perform right now. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to prove yourself. That momentary release is powerful because it reconnects them to the simple truth that their worth isn't dependent on what they do. It exists simply because they are. And here's where the brilliance of a hug lies. It allows a man to feel both strong and soft at the same time. There's no contradiction there. It's complementary. Being soft, allowing emotion, doesn't erase resilience. It doesn't erase competence. In fact, it deepens it. When he feels safe enough to accept tenderness, to experience comfort without shame, it teaches him a new level of emotional literacy. He starts to understand that strength isn't about armor, it's about integrity, presence, and authenticity. And that's magnetic. That's the kind of energy that changes the way he relates not just to you, but to himself. What's often overlooked is that this balance of vulnerability and strength is learned experientially. It isn't taught in books or lectures. It's felt in moments of connection, in gestures as simple as a meaningful hug, and the way it lands depends entirely on intention. A hug that is rushed, distracted, or half-hearted doesn't create this bridge. But when you hug someone with attention, with presence, with an understanding that you're creating a safe emotional space, the impact is profound. He may not label it consciously, but he'll carry it. He'll carry the feeling that he can be real without losing control, soft without being weak, open without being compromised. This is transformative because it reshapes his internal map of what masculinity can be. He begins to realize that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites, they're partners. You can be protective without shutting down. You can be decisive without being dismissive. You can be courageous without being detached. And when he experiences this through something as simple as touch, the lesson sinks in not as theory, but as lived truth. So, the next time you hug someone, remember, you're doing more than giving comfort. You're redefining what it means to be human, what it means to be strong. You're teaching in silence that power isn't the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. You're showing that openness is a choice, not a liability, and that true connection happens when walls come down, even for just a moment, and that in itself is revolutionary, absolutely. Here's a 700-word expansion in Mathew Hussey's style on the hidden emotional impact, flowing naturally and conversationally. It's amazing how something as simple as a hug can carry emotional weight that most people don't even realize. On the surface, it looks small, casual, maybe even ordinary, but underneath, the impact can be profound, especially for men who aren't always encouraged to process or express what they feel. That moment of touch reaches deeper than words ever could. It taps into a sense of recognition, of being valued, and of being understood in a way that goes beyond logic. And that's why it's so powerful. It speaks to the part of him that craves connection, even if he doesn't consciously admit it. The hidden impact of a hug isn't always immediate, and it doesn't always come with dramatic acknowledgement. Sometimes it's subtle, a change in posture, a softer expression, a breath released that had been held tight. Other times, it manifests internally in thoughts and feelings that he might never put into words. He feels lighter, calmer, more present, and more willing to show parts of himself he usually keeps guarded. And this is where the real magic happens, because men often carry tension, stress, or unspoken emotion, and a genuine hug allows all of that to be temporarily set aside, if only for a moment. It's almost like a reset button, a chance to reconnect with emotion without the pressure of performance. There's a misconception that men don't care about emotional intimacy, or that they're unaffected by gestures like this. But the truth is the opposite. They feel it deeply, even if they don't articulate it. Society has conditioned them to minimize expression, to treat emotional connection as optional or secondary. But when a hug lands in the right way, it bypasses all of that conditioning. It doesn't ask them to talk, explain, or justify. It simply allows them to experience a genuine moment of closeness, and that experience lingers. It stays with them in ways that conversations often can't match, shaping how they approach future relationships, how they perceive trust, and how they learn to open up emotionally. What's fascinating is how transformative this can be over time. One hug might be comforting, but repeated experiences of genuine touch create a deeper emotional language, one that doesn't require speech. He starts to associate closeness with safety, with being accepted exactly as he is. He learns that vulnerability isn't something to fear, and that emotional connection can coexist with strength and independence. These are subtle lessons, but they are incredibly powerful. They quietly reshape his emotional blueprint, influencing how he interacts not just with the person hugging him, but with others in his life. It's also important to note that the hidden impact of a hug depends on the energy behind it. A distracted, rushed, or perfunctory hug carries little weight, but when a hug is intentional, when it's delivered with attention and presence, it communicates volumes without a single word. It tells him, I see you, you matter, your feelings matter. It validates emotions that might have been buried under layers of expectation and social conditioning, and validation, even in silence, is incredibly potent. There's also something to be said about timing. The impact of a hug often hits hardest when he least expects it, when life feels heavy, when he's carrying stress or uncertainty. That unexpected warmth, that unspoken reassurance can shift his entire emotional state. It's not just comfort, it's recognition, acceptance, and an invitation to drop defenses, even if just for a moment. And that brief emotional release can ripple outward, influencing confidence, mood, and connection in ways he might not consciously notice, but definitely feels. Ultimately, The hidden emotional impact of a hug is about presence, attention, and genuine care. It's about creating a safe space for someone to experience emotion without performance or explanation. For men who often have fewer outlets to process feeling, it's transformative. It quietly teaches trust, intimacy, and emotional resilience. And even when he doesn't say anything, even when he doesn't appear changed, the hug has already left a mark. It has communicated, reassured, and opened a door that words alone often cannot. Absolutely. Here's a 700-word expansion in Mathew Hussey's style on timing and intent matter, flowing naturally and conversationally. It's funny how much difference the way a hug is given can make. It's not just about wrapping your arms around someone. It's about presence, intention, and timing. A hug can be rushed, distracted, or absent-minded, and in that moment it barely registers. But when it's done with awareness, when it's delivered at the right time and with real attention, it can be transformative. Timing and intent are everything because they communicate far more than the physical act itself. They reveal understanding, empathy, and emotional intelligence. And for men who may not always verbalize their feelings, this silent communication can be profound. Think about it. A hug given at a moment of stress, exhaustion, or uncertainty lands differently than a hug given casually while walking past. In one, there's a sense of care, a recognition of what he's carrying, a reassurance that he's seen and valued. In the other, it may be pleasant, but it doesn't resonate on the same level. Men notice this energy even if they can't articulate it. They feel the difference between being embraced out of habit and being embraced with intention. One makes them feel acknowledged, grounded, and understood. The other barely registers, almost like a fleeting gesture without consequence. And this subtle distinction is crucial because it's what separates connection from routine. Intent is equally powerful. A hug that's rushed or distracted communicates without words that you're only partially present. It says, even unintentionally, that what you're offering, comfort, warmth, care, is conditional or secondary. But when a hug is intentional, when it's given with focus and presence, it speaks volumes. It says, I'm here with you, I notice you, I'm choosing to be fully present right now. That choice, the decision to fully show up, is what makes a hug impactful. Men feel this in their bodies, in their posture, in the release of tension. It validates their experience and creates a sense of safety that's hard to replicate with words alone. Timing and intent also shape emotional receptivity. A hug offered at the wrong moment, when someone isn't ready or open, can feel intrusive or awkward. But when it's offered at a moment when he's vulnerable, stressed, or even just quietly reflective, it can become almost a lifeline. It's in these moments that a hug becomes more than physical contact. It becomes an anchor, and the beauty of this is that it doesn't require dramatic expression or speech. The presence behind the hug communicates understanding, validation, and emotional support in a way that words often cannot. There's also a subtle interplay between anticipation and reception. A well-timed hug doesn't feel forced. It feels natural, almost inevitable. It aligns with the emotional rhythm of the moment. Men pick up on this naturally. They respond to the alignment of energy, the unspoken message that this moment is theirs to be supported, seen, and cared for, and that response is rarely just internal. They may relax in ways they didn't realize they needed, soften their posture, or exhale tension they didn't know they were holding. These are the signs that the hug has truly landed and that the intention behind it has been felt. We often overlook how much a simple adjustment in timing and attention can alter impact. It's not about grand gestures, it's about being mindful. It's about noticing when he might need reassurance, when he might benefit from a pause, and offering it without demand, without expectation, and without distraction. That mindfulness, the ability to tune into someone else's emotional state and respond with presence, is what transforms a hug from ordinary to memorable. It becomes a silent conversation, a moment where connection deepens without a single word. Ultimately, what men feel during a hug depends less on the mechanics and more on the energy behind it. They notice whether you are truly there, whether the gesture carries thought, care, and respect. Timing and intent transform a simple physical act into an emotional bridge. It communicates that someone is attuned to their experience, that someone is willing to meet them in their vulnerability, and that connection can be offered safely. That's why even the briefest embrace, when delivered thoughtfully, can leave a lasting impression, quietly powerful, deeply validating, and emotionally resonant in ways that linger long after the hug ends. Absolutely, here's a 700-word expansion in Mathew Hussey's style on hugs as emotional currency, flowing naturally and conversationally. There's a fascinating idea that hugs aren't just gestures, they're a form of emotional currency. Think about it for a moment. When you give someone a hug, you're not just offering touch, you're offering value. You're saying, without words, that their feelings matter, that their presence is recognized, and that the connection you share is worth investing in. And for men who often navigate relationships through action and effort rather than verbal expression, a hug can carry a depth of meaning that far exceeds the simplicity of the act itself. Hugs communicate appreciation, care, and validation. They're a way of saying, I see you, I value you, you are worth this moment of attention and connection. And because they are silent, they bypass all the noise, all the filters, all the hesitation that often comes with words. Men may not always articulate gratitude or even acknowledge the impact immediately, but the effect is real. That simple embrace registers emotionally. It deposits a kind of unspoken credit into the relationship, building trust, reinforcing closeness, and creating an implicit understanding that this bond matters. What's extraordinary is that hugs operate on multiple levels at once. They are physical, yes, but they are also emotional and psychological. When a man experiences a hug from someone who is fully present, he feels more grounded, more supported, more secure. That emotional security is like a currency he can bank on. It influences how he interacts, how he opens up, and how he invests in the relationship moving forward. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but the long-term effect is profound. The trust and reassurance embedded in a simple hug create a foundation for deeper emotional intimacy. There's also a rhythm to emotional currency that makes hugs especially powerful. Unlike words, which can be misinterpreted or dismissed, a hug communicates value instantly. It's immediate, tangible, and undeniable, and because it is a physical exchange, it bypasses the tendency to overthink or rationalize feelings. Men feel it in the moment. Their body responds before their mind even has a chance to question it. That's why a well-timed, intentional hug can shift the entire emotional landscape of a relationship. It creates a deposit of warmth, safety, and trust that lingers far longer than conversation or gesture alone. Hugs also teach reciprocity, a crucial aspect of emotional currency. When a man receives a hug that is genuine, deliberate, and caring, it encourages him to respond in kind, not necessarily with another hug, but with openness, attentiveness, and emotional investment. It creates a cycle where care is given and returned, where connection is acknowledged and strengthened. That's the beauty of physical touch. It's not transactional in the shallow sense, but it establishes a pattern of emotional exchange that nourishes both people. And here's something that's often overlooked. The value of a hug isn't in how long it lasts or how tight it is. The currency lies in intention and presence. Even a brief, deliberate hug communicates care more effectively than a long, distracted one. It's the thought behind it, the energy invested in being fully present, that makes it meaningful. Men sense this immediately, and it shapes how they perceive connection. It tells them that their feelings matter, that their experience is valid, and that someone is willing to invest emotional energy in them without expectation or demand. Ultimately, hugs as emotional currency remind us that human connection is not just about words or grand gestures. It's about consistent, meaningful moments of presence and care. For men who may have been socialized to downplay emotional expression, a hug communicates volumes. It reassures, it validates, and it strengthens the bond in ways that words often can't. It's a quiet form of investment that pays dividends over time, cultivating trust, intimacy, and emotional security. When you embrace someone fully, when your intention is clear and your presence is genuine, you are depositing value into the relationship. You're saying, without a single syllable, that connection matters. And that, more than anything, is why a hug is one of the most powerful forms of emotional currency. We possess it communicates, reinforces, and nurtures in a way that lingers long after the moment ends.